Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so happy you are here joining us today because today we are connecting with a really, really wonderful, beautiful human being. Lauren Peterson is someone that I had the privilege of getting to know a couple of years ago during an event for Yoga Gives Back. And since then, we've traveled to India together with Yoga Gives Back as ambassadors earlier this year, visiting all of the non-for-profit sites. But Lauren is really a gem. Sometimes I think as Ashtanga yoga practitioners, we think all of the teachers, the famous teachers out there are online or teaching internationally, but Lauren Peterson is really a foundational teacher in the Ashtanga yoga community, especially in the Los Angeles and Malibu area. She started practicing yoga in the 80s and dove headfirst, full speed ahead in the 90s, assisting Chuck Miller for over 10 years, practicing asana at a very advanced level, 3rd series, 4th series, even learning some 5th series from Richard Freeman. She started her career as a dancer, and that led to acting, which she still enjoys doing to this day. And in her spare time, she donates much of her time and energy to Yoga Gives Back, as well as other organizations that are helping individuals, such as the Monte Nindo Eating Disorder Center, where she helps teach women the discipline of yoga, some of the teachings and techniques that come from yoga while they are there struggling with eating disorders. She has also been featured in Yoga Journal magazine, as well as on the television series Healing Quest. She's just amazing. So I can't wait for you to meet her. And if you want to meet her in person later this year, you can find her teaching on the retreat that Yoga Gives Back is hosting in Japan, as well as during a class, a 3-hour yoga retreat class on November 9th, which will be happening in LA, and it's the gala retreat for Yoga Gives Back. You can buy tickets and support Yoga Gives Back and join Lauren as well as several other teachers during this amazing class and get your ticket to come to the evening gala. The evening gala will be happening on Sunday, November 10th. And it will be from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a wonderful celebration of the work that Yoga Gives Back does, as well as a Namaste Award will be given to Belinda Carlisle for all of the work that she has done in supporting Yoga Gives Back, and also as co-founder for Animal People Alliance. So it will be an incredible event. I hope to see you there in person, November 9th and 10th in Los Angeles. And you can meet Lauren in person during this time. So come support Yoga Gives Back, meet Lauren, come hang with me and Russell, and I can't wait to see you. I'm really looking forward to this time. It's such an amazing celebration each year with Yoga Gives Back and raising money to support the incredible work and the non-for-profit organizations, the NGOs that are on the ground in India, really making a huge difference for women and children's lives. So without further ado, let's hear about Lauren's stories, and some of them you're going to love. There's some special celebrity anecdotes near the end, so be sure to listen all the way through. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony, and I'm here today with Russell Case.
So I just before we got on, our guest today asked if I had ever done yoga before, and I wanted to say that I don't know if I actually have. I know that I've certainly touched the light fantastic, but I really think that was the acid. One thing I will say is that I did do the yoga series as prescribed to me by Guruji. I did it for 30 years, and then I thought he did say that was probably about enough. So that's it for me. So 30 years is enough. Enough. You whole life lasting. So yeah, we'll see.
You're just basking in the residue now?
It feels good.
Well, our guest today is the beautiful Lauren Peterson. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, Harmony and Russell.
You look like maybe you've done Ashtanga yoga for going like what, 40 years?
I've done I've practiced Ashtanga probably about 30.
Oh, really?
Probably let me think, because I started yoga in my late 20s. I didn't get into yoga till
Oh,
my late 20s,
I
and
was a
that was
teenager. Yeah.
no, I was a dancer first, but
Yeah.
came into it, um, got into kind of really mellow asana. First started with Iyengar yoga actually for
Nice.
years.
As you
For a few
do.
years.
Yeah.
And then I found Ashtanga, and after the first primary series class, which was a lead class, I couldn't pick up my arms, and I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, so many push-ups.
all those chaturangas, and coming from dance, I
Yeah.
I had some flexibility, and I think my legs were fairly strong because
Mhm.
I used to jump.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was okay. It was like I need to be here for a while. I need to be doing this for a while.
But you like you were nearly like you were professional. You're a professional dancer.
I was a professional dancer, yeah. I started with, everything, like, I started with tap dancing, actually,
Oh,
and then
fun.
I got into it was actually my tap teacher who first sent me to a, an audition to do the summer program with San Francisco Ballet Company when I was a
Amazing.
teenager, and I got into that, which was kind of surprising. I was doing ballet. My first class was a tap ballet class. Then I went to a really good tap teacher and a really good ballet teacher.
Mhm.
And then, that kinda started it. Then I ended up being pushed onto a ballet track,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
'cause you definitely have, like, the ballet look.
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I
Long
stayed
limbs.
it, I was at School of American Ballet, which is the feeder school for New York City Ballet Company.
Yeah.
This is way back in the late '70s, early '80s. The really cool thing is, I mean, I was a teenager, that but Balanchine was still alive, and he would
Mhm.
roam the halls, and the company members would take class with us. Baryshnikov was in the company one of the years I was there for a couple of years, and Gelsey Kirkland would take class with us. So
Amazing.
yeah, it
I just
was
got
pretty.
shivers.
And then they would rehearse in our studios. Our
That's
studios. I mean,
incredible.
I haven't been there in years, but that was pretty cool, and they would leave the door open and you could watch. But I remember Baryshnikov would take Stanley Williams' class with us, and, on stage, you'd see him do, like, 11 rotations, and
Yeah.
in class, he would do, like, a single pirouette, and, of course, we were all watching, but it was perfect.
Yeah. Like, I just need to practice one.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's so amazing. That really takes me back to ballet years thinking about that. What
Did you
dancing
start as
on
a
my
dancer?
grave. Yeah, I started as a ballet dancer, and that was my, like, dream, childhood dream, teenage dream, and
Mhm.
I remember reading, Gelsey Kirkland's Dancing on My Grave. I don't know, I must
I
have
read
been
that too.
13 or 14.
Yeah,
What a
harrowing.
book. Yeah, incredible.
It's interesting about Gelsey. Also, I was for a bit before I went to New York when I was a teenager, I was, an kind of an intern with, I don't know, like, not fully company member, but I was studying with the LA Ballet Company, and Joanna Kirkland was a member of it, her sister.
Yeah,
She was like the star of it.
yeah,
But
amazing.
Gelsey, true to form, we had strict rules about what we could wear in class. Like you had to wear a certain color leotard and tights and all that, and limited leg warmers. She would basically wear a trash bag on her, like rubber pants. Do you remember those old rubber? You're younger than I am, but the rubber pants that
Yeah.
people would wear
Yeah.
just made
Yeah.
you hydrated. Yeah, but
Yeah,
she
the
would wear
rubber
all this
pants.
stuff on her tiny little frame. It was,
Just trying to sweat off that extra, like, 0
yeah.
pounds.
And then when you read the book, you see her side of those years,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
tortured.
Torture,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, wow. What an incredible beginning to a career,
Ye
just, like, immersed in the heart and soul of, like, ballet at that time.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I was there for a few years, and one of those years I was living in a rooming house it was a woman's rooming house, and my roommate was also a dance, student.
Yeah.
So I was immersed in ballet. We had like 2, 3 classes a day, and I was living with a ballet dancer. I was also working at a yogurt shop, and somebody came in and mentioned Herbert Berghoff Studios. I don't even know, which is an acting studio.
Yeah.
And part of me was like, I have to do that. I wasn't thinking about being an actor. And I would go down to Broome Street, down to the village,
Yeah.
and I would study at HB Studios. I took a few, like, over the years, I would take like 1 or 2 classes a semester
Yeah.
and just loved being around a different kind of insane people,
Yeah, yeah.
Like the actors were a different sort of insanity than the dancers. We
Yeah,
were
it's
all like
funny.
type A insane artists, but yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. And I look back on that training there, and it kind of set me up because I do acting as well. I
Yeah.
got into that as well.
But what drew you back to LA after all of that time in New York?
Well, I was in New York for a few years and just wasn't sure I wanted to be on the ballet track because, like
Mhm.
I said, the first thing I got into was tap dancing, and that was from watching musicals.
Right.
I wanted to be
Yeah.
Fred Astaire.
Yeah, there's a very different vibe between tap dancing and ballet.
Yeah. And it was just kind of like the school I was at, well, I was on a scholarship in LA too at the
Yeah.
uh, Los Angeles School of Dance. With Sally Whalen was my teacher there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And for example, when I would be there during the year, come home for the summers. And when I decided not to go back, a woman actually said to me it was like a sin because it was God's gift that I
Right.
had to go into the ballet world. But I also had a bout of anorexia. I
Yeah.
stopped eating when I was in
Yeah.
New York. I was really restricting my eating
Mhm.
and dropped weight really fast. Fortunately, when I came back, um, and decided not to go back, which was a
Mhm.
hard decision because it's a really hard school to get into.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, totally.
I wandered in, I was kind of we had Dramalog in those days, which was this pre-internet. You would look in the back of this magazine, this called Dramalog, for acting gigs or dancing gigs,
Yeah.
any kind of open calls you could go to. And I went to this thing for a dancer. Long story short, I ended up getting a job to dance in Japan for the first time, and that
Oh.
was like 1980 or so, and, when I was in Japan, I ended up being there on contract for 4 months. Um, the I don't know, the eating weird stuff, the restricting kind of fell away because I went
Mhm.
and I had all these, like, rules. I wouldn't do caffeine, I wouldn't do sugar, I had all these rigid
Mhm.
things, and they were feeding us at the place we were working. They would give us food. We were doing a TV show, also a weekly TV show, and would give us bento boxes. And I also did. I'm not like a model type out here, but in Japan, I guess I was. I did a lot of print work there, mind you.
Yeah.
It's the 80s, it was a long time ago. Um, and every job I would show up for, you would sit down first and they would give you like a cup of coffee and a little piece of cake. So I just kind of relaxed and I
Ah,
Mhm.
don't know, just getting out of the environment of
yeah.
certain family things that were going on and the dance world
Mhm.
cured my eating disorder.
Yeah.
Mm,
I
Yeah.
start normally.
mhm,
Also,
It's
it
int
just living in another culture made me realize that what a narrow view of the world I had in my little family life and in the ballet life, you know?
mhm,
What it
Yeah.
and I was like, "There's a lot more life than this."
mhm,
You know?
Yeah, it's so interesting that, that, like, idea of how our patterns get so triggered by our surroundings, and when we are taken out of our context, it's like we almost don't know who we are anymore, and you have to redefine yourself and rediscover yourself, and so sometimes that is, like, exactly the reset you need in order to let go of the personality, and it opens you up to recognizing that actually it's not fixed.
Yeah. We're like these raw diamonds, and the little facets that you carve out show the beauty.
Mm,
So, if you're not making yourself fully faceted and seeing all points of view, you're
mhm.
not as beautiful as you can be.
I like that.
mhm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
that's why I like
interested in.
acting too. You
Oh,
put
go ahead.
yourself into the head of someone else, and you kinda have to try to find
Mm,
empathy for that character, and it's finding the parts of you, and I remember discovering this in acting class in New York first. I was like, "Oh, wow, I can tap into all this pain and stuff, but it's like a safe place to do it through this
mm.
character."
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah, like, there's it gives you that freedom to explore these different parts of yourself, these different aspects or emotions or personalities that maybe aren't acceptable in everyday life or don't seem acceptable in everyday life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's funny, isn't it? Like you because you sit around with your family and there's just thousands of years of abuse that have led to this event, and you're all just sitting there, just
Eating pumpkin pie.
eating pumpkin pie, and you go back into your little voting booth and you vote how you want. Or, like, you go back to dinner, and there's so little can really be acknowledged in that environment because people are just trying to play nice and just try to, you know suck it up, and maybe mom says something that gets under your skin, but it's gotten under your skin 10,000 times. You're just like, mm-hmm, yeah, mom. And then you go back to your yoga practice, or you go back to your art practice, whether it's dance or theater or painting, or this, the yoga that we do, and it's like, oh, it's all there. Every single samskara is all wrapped up in every single decision that we make in that environment, and if you access it authentically, it can sort of flower, I think, into something beautiful. But maybe if you I don't even know if that's true, though. I don't know if you maybe if you hide it, it can come out as rage and then be interesting.
It would be interesting, but maybe not healthy.
You look at Bobby De Niro and you think maybe all that rage is just what he needed.
Anger management.
Yeah. Mm.
I remember very specifically when um, I was also I got into yoga just before I got pregnant. My son is now 33, and um,
A young man.
he's a young man. And then I really got into that. Like, that was very mellow stuff that I was doing. And then, like I said, Iyengar. But I remember really specifically coming from practicing with Chuck Miller. Chuck Miller is who I consider my teacher, and the Ashtanga, getting into the Ashtanga practice and taking the tools of learning to be present, because that is what yoga is to me,
Mhm.
being present and listening. It's
Mm.
acting too, honestly. When you're working with a partner in a scene, you memorize, you do the background stuff, and then you just try to be present. But I remember taking those tools to being a parent, and
Mm.
you have a son, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And just trying. telling myself, I'm going to be present. I'm going to listen to him. You
Mhm.
know, I'm going to try to take in what he's doing and answer him.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they get so much more from you than if they drone on and you're not really there for them, I think.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's a huge life lesson, but I learned that, definitely refined that by getting on my mat.
Mm.
Mhm. But that's beautiful because it's not then so much about necessarily unwinding the chords and roots of who you are. It's just being there for it.
Mhm.
And that is ever changing, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
we know when you do a practice that is a set sequence like we've all done, you see how much your body changes daily and then gradually over time. You know, at certain points you're getting stronger. I remember I was before I got into Ashtanga, I did a workshop and I remember the teacher Paul Yin Yoga. I can't think of his name right now.
A yin
Oh,
yoga teacher named
yeah,
Paul.
Paul, the famous one who, like,
Yeah.
created Yin Yoga.
Yeah, kind of made it anyway. And
Yeah,
he
I
did
know him, I know.
throw pose, Bakasana.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I'm never going to do that, you know.
Mhm.
And then
Right?
you're doing third series, if
Yeah.
you know, and you're doing like a string of arm balances. I never thought I'd do anything like that. So gradually you watch your body get stronger, and then I'm 66 now. You gradually see yourself losing certain things as well. And it's
Yeah.
about just being present with what is.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is something that a lot of practitioners really struggle with and even fear, like younger practitioners, right? Fear like losing postures or losing the practice. And so I'm curious because you've, gone into fifth series over your sort of like arc of your yeah,
I
arc
learned like
of the
I was shown the first 5 poses of fifth from Richard Freeman.
yeah.
Um, I can't do most of them. I probably can't d the first one I can't do, never could. Yeah.
Oh, that Kanda Pidasana where you bring the feet
I
up?
That's the
yeah.
only one left I can do, yeah.
That's from all of your years dancing.
Oh,
You
you
got
didn't?
the strong
Yeah,
ankles.
it's just I'm a hip swiveler.
Yeah, you've got the open hips and the flexible
That's
ankles.
all I've got.
Uh-huh. Kino said when we were in Mysore, I think she said that she was told women shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I think if I'm quoting her correctly, I think when we had coffee, when you were you with us when we had coffee with her? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I
Yeah,
remember her saying
the
that.
the relentless
Yeah.
sexism in India is something I'm still fascinated by.
Yeah, there's something about, like, it disrupts your ability to, get pregnant or something, but
Sure it
I
does.
really don't
If
think it's
that
an
worked, people would have done it.
yeah, I don't think it's a reliable birth control method, so
I also found out you don't eat papaya when we were there this trip. Did you know that?
yeah,
No,
also
Saraswati said, "Eat papaya and it regulates your menstrual system."
yeah, but you're not
Whatever,
supposed to eat it when you're pregnant. It's like
You
a whole
can't eat when you're
whatever.
pregnant or you'll miscarry.
yeah.
I didn't know
Sure
that.
it will.
Again, I don't
Sure.
think that's reliable science. I don't know, I just like throwing
Not
that
a
out.
reliable method of birth control, you know?
No, papaya, definitely
Yeah,
not.
yeah. They would have posted that at the grocery store.
Yeah,
This causes
like, it
abortions.
would it would come with a warning, I think.
You know, you wouldn't be able to sell it in Oklahoma. I mean, it's like,
Right, that's true. It would be
well,
outlawed in most of this country now.
most
Yeah.
states
Least that.
where none of the people live, it would be outlawed. Um, I'm like, I'm interested in something that you said, and just to get to the heart of our our inner wounds. You were dancing and you went to yoga and you discovered that there was a kind of yoke or unity to many different facets of your life. And I'd like to explore that a little bit about the kind of the kind of man that your dad was and what
Uh-huh.
he was into. And he's a remarkable writer as well. And then you started picking up books that he lent you. And I wonder if you could tell us more about that and how that kind of informed your decision to leave ballet, which I think must have been painful.
Yeah, it was. My dad was an engineer by trade, so he's very analytical and even-tempered. If you anyone watching who knows Chuck Miller, Chuck reminds me of my dad in temperament,
Yeah.
and he became my teacher, as I said. So he was an engineer by trade, but he was always fascinated with other cultures and specifically other religions. So he ended up writing a book. It's called Everyone is Right. It's like a textbook. Well, I have it. I pulled it out because I've been rereading it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Everyone is right.
That's huge.
A new
It's
look at
called
comparative
Everyone is Right.
religion and its
It's
relation
a
to
new look
science.
at a new look at comparative religion and its relation to science. And in it, the first part of it, he compares Christianity, Taoism. The main texts of that put together the philosophies of Christianity, Taoism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And then in the next section, he compares the Near East, so the Far East and Christianity.
Mhm.
And it's just like a textbook, like he'll pick a subject. I'll have my glasses on. And then he'll see what each scripture. So here's like control of the senses, and he'll just tell you what these different religions say about it, what they're
Oh,
Amazing.
that's fascinating.
and then he compares Judaism and Islam, their
Mhm.
texts. And then he
Mhm.
gets into the esoterics, and then he gets into things like Kirlian photography. And I haven't read it in a long time, and I had pulled it out recently, which is probably why I had mentioned it to you when we were chatting about this.
Yeah.
Peterson, is that like a Lutheran name or a Scandinavian name? Is that where it's coming from?
Scandinavian. He passed away
Yeah.
quite a while ago, but he is Swedish.
Ah.
It was Petterson, but
Mhm.
his father was an immigrant, and both his father and mother were immigrants from Sweden, and my mom is Irish, and her parents are immigrants from Ireland.
Wow.
And he was the very even-tempered one. My mom, who is still alive at 91 and lives by herself, um, is much more volatile. So it was kind of a chaotic house in some
Mm.
ways
Mhm.
because she was left to take care of the kids. And I think that's what made me gravitate towards ballet and
Mm.
dance, because you had rules and Ashtanga, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's some serious similarities there.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of ballet dancers, when they get into yoga, get into Ashtanga, I've noticed, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's very like the discipline, the rules, the structure, the repetition, all of it just is like a
yeah.
kind of a mirror of each other.
Mhm.
And yet I think so my dad he gave me like the Tao Te Ching. He gave me the
Oh.
Bhagavad Gita because he
Mhm.
was reading all these books and then ended up writing a book and comparing a lot of these texts. It was just something that was fascinating to him. And he was born Lutheran, I'm pretty sure, but my mom was Catholic. And I remember when he got baptized.
Oh, wow.
So we were, kids.
Yeah.
I can't remember what age I was, but I have memory of him getting
Yeah.
baptized. That was fully for my mom. But if you read his book, you can see that he kind of viewed religion as an interesting set of beliefs that different peoples and different cultures have. And I
Mhm.
think I follow in those footsteps.
Mhm.
And I was definitely attracted to more like Far East philosophies like Buddhism and Taoism. They resonated with me, and you see that in the Yoga Sutras too. The teachings. So it kind of brought together my need for structure and to be in my physical body, like coming
Mhm.
from dance, and I'm talking about yoga
Mhm.
and philosophical beliefs, because they were
Mhm.
constantly telling you to be present, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Chuck was a great teacher for that. He would always say, when it becomes Ashtanga, a set of poses you have to get through, you're not doing it right.
Mhm.
I love
And when
that.
I was in my mid-50s, up until my mid-50s, I was loving doing, like, through 4th series. It was
Yeah.
feeling good on my body. And then
Sure.
I started to get back pain. And
Mm.
anyone familiar with the 4th series knows you go from these extreme back bends to extreme forward bends. You go from
Mhm.
scorpion pose to putting your foot behind your head with your arm over it in a forward bend.
Yeah.
Literally. Those
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
those 2 poses are next to each other. And my back was like, "You can't do this the way you're doing." Intermediate series
Yeah.
is much more forgiving. You do a string of
Mhm.
back bends, then you do a string of forward bends.
Yeah.
But I guess at some point, your body is a rubber bandy, and it was for decades, you
Yeah,
know?
you had
Now
decades of rubber bandy, so that's good.
now it's like I can still do a lot of those poses, but my practice is definitely listening to my body, and if I'm gonna get into some of those deeper poses or arm
Mhm.
balances, I'm not gonna do that many in a
Yeah.
row, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna warm up to the deep forward bends. So
Yeah,
Chuck, I think, gave us permission to do that.
Mm.
Did you
Yeah.
study with Chuck?
Yeah,
I
we hosted him twice at our school in Victoria, and I just saw him recently, actually, earlier this year when I was in Lisbon. We had dinner together, so it was
Oh,
really
how
nice.
nice. I haven't
Yeah,
seen him in years. A few
yeah,
times he came out and did some workshops in Santa Monica, and I went down to them, and
nice. Yeah, yeah,
good
it
time.
had been about 10 years since I'd seen him, so it
you're
was really nice.
you're tearing up a little bit.
No,
Mm.
no, it was just beautiful. He's so beautiful, and I love that just the wisdom, the practical wisdom that he brings to the
Mhm.
practice, right? The exactly
Yeah.
what you said, like, if it's something that you're forcing yourself to do or you feel like you have to do, or you're doing it mechanically without awareness, without, presence and paying attention, then it's not really doing anything for you in a way.
You have to think, what is it for? What are we doing this for, you
Mm,
know? What end
Yeah.
result do you want?
yeah.
That's interesting because I think I've really struggled with that for decades, is that, coming out of I came out of American football and street basketball and a pretty heavy trauma, history, and for every single time I did yoga, it was a experience of tolerating terror and suffering. And it was intense suffering. From the first day to the very last class I did, um, it's eh,
What was the
that
suffering and
the en
terror from, you think?
the at any moment, I would go into, contraction. I have,
Like a back
back
spasm.
spasms, multiple
Oh,
bone spurs, and osteoarthritis in my back, and, compressed discs, but I had that when I was 19,
oh
and
boy.
so I went into yoga thinking it would help me with my back, and I would manage it and kind of keep things straight and keep things aligned, but every single practice was horrible.
Mm.
And
But you must have felt good after, otherwise you wouldn't keep doing it. Like, there must have been some benefit, otherwise you really wouldn't have kept doing it.
well, I
So,
I
what was the
needed I needed
benefit?
to work out. I had a lot of energy and I needed to do something for a couple hours to get it out. But I would wake up paralyzed in fear of what I was about to do, and then I would do that horrified and terrified the whole time, cry at the end, and then I'd be done with it, and I would be so happy I didn't have to do it again for 24 hours or 22 hours. And then I would, do all of this other kind of passive stuff to prepare myself for the next time so that, hopefully it'd be better. All that said, I feel a lot better now not doing it. And I feel like in my body, I feel good. I feel like I stretch a little bit, I work out a little bit. Um, but it's just so interesting to me when I hear people say that everything went really swimmingly for a long time. And then I got into fourth series and I started to really, um, knock my head against the wall with these forward bends and back bends. I was like, yeah,
That
that's
happened
what
in
it's
primary
like
series for you?
in the first, that's what it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Yeah. And I remember having a conversation with Maya Heiss, who is a student of yours, that it's like some people hit it the first day, some people have to do fourth series to experience what that is, that terror of your own pattern.
Yeah. I have you just made me think of something that I've said before. I feel like people say, "Why is Ashtanga yoga so hard?" And I feel like it's so we will all reach our limit. I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't reach a limit at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
for me
that's so interesting, the reaching the limit, like, that's kind of an interesting juicy point and, like, a key to what you're saying is so, like, how do you recognize that limit, and how do you come to terms with that limit or make peace with the limit, or do you know what I'm saying?
how do you deal with the difficulties, which is maybe the biggest lesson of all, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then at some point, you're going to not be able to do everything you're doing, and I think that's a beautiful lesson to learn. You know, we
Mhm,
have to learn that lesson to go through life without giving up completely. No,
mhm.
I don't mean giving up your practice, but just giving up on yourself. You know,
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
have to get creative, find different ways around it. And
Mhm.
yeah, everyone is interesting. I remember Maya came to me at Malibu Gym. That was the first place I taught in Malibu. And so that's over 30 years ago. It's got to be 32 years ago or something. She just wandered in because she lived in Malibu. And I had just started Ashtanga and I saw her practice. I saw her back bend and I'm like, you got to try this. And I took her with me. I started with Mati Azrati, which we haven't talked that much about, but
Mhm.
she was my first teacher. And back in the old days, originally when I started, the afternoon class was a lead class. So I started doing a lead primary series with Mati, and I brought Maya to that. And I mean, Mati saw that back bend, and first class, she could go back and grab her legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then once I had learned primary, Mati said, "You have to go to Chuck. You have to go see
Mhm.
Chuck."
Yeah.
And because I was a single parent with a little kid, I didn't know how I could do that, but family helped me out. So,
Wow.
Mhm.
so that I was able to get in a few times a week
Yeah.
to practice with Chuck. Um, and then then Maya, of course, just became a major devotee of Patabi Joyce,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Spent
Yeah.
Russell, you said that you for 30 years did a program that Patabi Joyce gave you.
Oh,
Is
just the
that what you
same one as everybody else. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, as
okay.
prescribed.
As
Yeah.
Okay.
prescribed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I
You know,
mean
in the old days, like before it became so huge,
mm,
Chuck told me, like, when he was learning intermediate series, they added a fourth series pose, Padangustasana Dhanurasana, with the Dhanurasanas, and he let me do that. So it sounds as though back when there were 12 people in the room,
Mhm.
Guruji was much more pliable with
mm,
giving out with the way he gave poses. And Nancy Gilgoff talks about there being the 4 series and not doing vinyasa between a lot of the poses that we do. And of
mm,
course, when it grew so much,
yeah.
I think they felt they had to kind of
Yeah.
solidify it and make it
But
something that,
when we
um,
arrived in 2003, 2004, that's what it looked like. Things were exploding, and they kinda saw that it was chaos, and they said, "We're just gonna make everything the same so that we can control this room a little bit."
yeah,
Standardized.
Standardized, yeah, that's what it looked like.
standardized. Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting, that observation that when it was smaller and also it wasn't, a brand, let's say, um, it was more about teaching to the student that was in front of you, and so, yeah, if you can do Purna Dhanurasana, which is a 4 series pose, and it's in your body, why not do it?
Hmm.
Why
Yeah.
wait until 4 series? If you're doing a sequence of Dhanurasanas
Yeah.
and you can do the most difficult one, just do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's sort of interesting, and I know, like, even, Trivikramasana,
Yeah,
like, we used to be in
Yeah.
standing.
primary series.
Yeah, right after,
Yeah.
right after your Ekapada, you would, like,
I mean, that's how
pull
we learned
somebody
it
up,
too.
pull your foot up by
Yeah.
your foot, you know?
But then
Uh-huh.
not so much anymore.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
how did you make peace though with like doing all of these beautiful advanced asanas and then when your body starts to say no and you're becoming aware of it saying no, like this doesn't feel good anymore. How did you kind of make peace with it? Did it feel as sort of like gut wrenching as like leaving ballet? Was it a bit more malleable? Did you decide to do different types of asana? How did you kind of incorporate that?
Kind of more that I had a big life change. So for one thing, I was teaching and I was teaching yoga and I wasn't teaching Ashtanga. I never led a well, except traveling. When I travel for workshops, then I'll lead Mysore classes or a retreat. But I never, probably because I was a single parent and I wanted to practice in the morning. I
Yeah.
never wanted to lead a room. I did assist Chuck for years, like
Mhm.
one
Yeah.
day a week.
Yeah.
Um, so so I was already teaching not Ashtanga classes,
Mhm.
vinyasa flow and I think the dancer choreographer in me
Yeah.
likes putting together sequencing. So I was
Yeah.
already doing that. So it wasn't too traumatic to stop doing that. And also 11 years ago, I got this thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
The dog.
hello. Hello,
And
little doggy.
I had to walk
Mhm.
her every morning. So I
Um,
kind of took longer walks and did shorter practices.
Yeah.
Still keep
That's
as Harmony knows, I still do a primary series practice
yeah.
weekly,
Yeah.
and that's
mm,
kind of grounding and nice, and I have a nice little group of loyal folks who do it with me. But
Yeah.
then on my own, I might do straight through intermediate series or I mix it up. Um, just
Yeah.
learning to listen to my body.
Yeah, and it sounds like giving yourself permission to be a bit more playful, to be a bit more curious and explore different
Yeah,
movements.
and also I've taught for 30 years at a gym. It's a fitness center up in Malibu,
Yeah.
and they had Steve Ross used to teach there. Herb Sandoval taught there. They've had a lot of really interesting people teach there, and we get a lot of interesting people there. I had Sting in class there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He and his wife popped into Ashtanga, but
The little gym for the rich and famous that no one knows about.
yeah. S so I started to take other classes, like dance classes,
Oh,
choreography
yeah.
classes that they choreograph dance classes, and they have, like, a great class called On the Ball, which is kind of yeah. So I just explored doing different things because, like Russell, I had to be doing something physical, okay? So
Yeah.
that's, I think, what's hard for a lot of Ashtangis if all you've done is these sequences, how do you modify it? I felt
mhm.
like I was being a bad person if I even skipped a vinyasa, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think
But
people really struggle with that.
people struggle with that. I think having Chuck as my teacher
Yeah.
helped a lot, and Mati too. Mati would bring chairs and blocks and things into the asana room.
Yeah.
Because she was an Iyengar teacher first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were already a bit rebellious,
Yeah,
you
they're
know?
more alternative in their approach to practice. I mean, I know Chuck said to me, the best yoga practice I ever gave myself was lying on a bolster with my legs up the wall. And I was like, mind blowing when he told me
Yeah.
that, like, quite many years ago. But it was like such permission to really listen to what you need, like, listen to
Yes.
what your body needs in the moment.
Yeah.
And Maddie, of course, I mean, she would just, like, have you tied up in a rope and a strap with a block between your thighs before you even knew you were in a posture, so
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can
When I
can I
would occasionally, after I was working with Chuck all the time, occasionally I would pop into her afternoon class, which became a Mysore class, and
yeah.
I she would either ignore me the whole class
Yeah.
or I could barely get through anything. She'd say, "Lauren, wait!" Shout across the room. Oh.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about Monte? It's interesting to me when someone passes someone off to someone else, and because so often I think, like, if Maya High sort of walk into my room and you and I were teaching together, I'd probably claim her as my own, like, that's my student.
Because she's so
And that's,
flexible. She could
that's
gratify
and
your ego as a
yeah,
teacher.
exactly, right? So, like, someone who passes someone off, like, "Oh, you should go with Chuck," is like, I'm stunned that someone would pass someone off like that. And so what do you think she was thinking? Like, you needed Chuck. Why did you need Chuck more than her, needing to keep you?
Well, it could just be practical because at that time, afternoon practice was lead primary.
Mm.
It wasn't
Okay.
my store. Later, it
Okay.
transitioned to my store. I think there were so many people, and she felt like I was ready to start to go on to intermediate.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. And so then you needed to do that kind of
Yeah.
class.
And I was like, "Oh, I have a baby. I don't know how to do this." And,
Right. Right.
once he
Okay.
was in school, I could do that. Like, my brother
Okay.
could take him to school.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've had a place together for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. Was
Another
then
who was big and also helped with that was Richard Freeman. Did you ever study with Richard?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
We
did an
love Richard.
advanced teacher training with Richard in Boulder, and, he teaches so slowly. Chuck does too when
Yeah,
he
I
teaches
know.
workshops, and it's so deep,
Yeah.
um, and yet he's the one who showed me those 5th series poses. Well, that was funny. They had once upon one year, at a yoga journal conference in Colorado, they did an Ashtanga thing. And in the my storeroom in the morning were Chuck, Richard, Monte, Eddie Modestini, Nikki Duane,
Eddie.
and
Oh, wow.
there was one other person in
I
there.
love Nikki too.
Was Mary
Yeah.
there?
Mm.
Mary was at the conference, but not
Not
they
in the
were
room.
leading the my storeroom in the morning. There were
Yeah.
like 6
Mhm.
of them. Who else? Maybe Tim Muller. It
Yeah.
was like it was crazy. And at that conference, one day, Chuck just brought Richard over and said, "Richard, show her what you know of Fifth. She's ready." That's
Wow.
how it
Oh,
was.
and Chuck had not done Fifth
No, he
himself.
hadn't done Fifth. And
Oh.
Richard was like, "Oh, I haven't done it in a while, and let me see if I can remember it."
Yeah,
And when they
Pindasana, then you do the splits, then there's a couple,
splits, you do a
handstands.
handstand looking at your
Yeah,
feet.
looking your feet, then you do the on top of your hands and back around under your hands.
Right. I
The
haven't done it
TikTok.
myself in ages,
I
but
practiced next to Mark Yao as he learned Fifth in Mysore, and so
Mark's
I
an
took
interesting
I took
man.
I made drawings of all the poses he was doing.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was in touch with Mark at one point, and he was very negative about yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I
"No,
was
nobody's doing yoga. You're not all doing yoga."
he
Just
got,
doing
he got kicked out of Guruji's pranayama class, and he kind of lost his way. He had said to Sharat that he didn't like how crazy the main shala was. It was like a, you know, cattle call, and it was intense. You're getting elbowed in the face as you're trying to get into practice in the morning so you can get your one spot, and you just had enough of it. So he went over to Sharat's class, which was, more cool, 20 people in the room. He could, not have to worry about all of that craziness. And then Harmony and I were there together, and Guruji announced the pranayama class was up. And I think it may have been the year after us, because I think Nick and Guy were in the room, and they both told me the story.
Yeah.
And he walked in, and Guruji shouted at him and said, "No free classes, get out." And he never came back.
I was there though.
You were in the
I think
room?
it was after because that was the last pranayama class that Patabi Joyce taught. He got sick after that.
Oh, yeah. So it was like a
It
month
was,
later.
yeah, maybe you'd left already.
Yeah.
But
So he wouldn't let what Mark was invited or told he could go by Sharat, but then Guruji wouldn't let him in, or
No,
no?
Shrat hated the idea that any of us could go to Guruji's pranayama class. He resented it. But once it was announced that there was pranayama, Mark had been going for years, so he just assumed
He could go.
he could go because he'd been going.
But you were going, Harmony. You guys were going?
Yeah, we were
Because
there.
you had to be an advanced series to go.
Yeah. And so
Mark was.
Mark showed up because it had been announced, but he had taken another teacher.
He was in Sharat's class, not Patabi Joyce's class.
And we didn't even understand that amongst ourselves, that between the family members, if you're with Saraswati or Sharat or Patabi Joyce, they own you. They own you as students. I thought of them as a big happy family.
Yeah.
No, they're in competition with each other for students, which we didn't understand. And Mark didn't understand that. So he walks in the room because he's been going to pranayama for ages, gets kicked the hell out, and said, screw Ashtanga Yoga. I'm not doing this anymore.
But I don't think it was just that. I mean,
He's also losing his mind.
I think it happens sometimes. You put all of your energy and time and attention, and you're making so many sacrifices. And I know Mark was making a lot of sacrifices, like drinking only cream and like liquid ibuprofen on the body, and like, doing all of this stuff to maintain these advanced asanas, which is basically like a contortionist practice every day.
Yeah.
Harder.
And then I think at some point you get to a place within yourself where you're like, why am I doing this? What is this all for? And especially if your whole focus has been on the asana, it doesn't seem like you're not getting enlightened doing asana, right? I mean, maybe the enlightenment is the breaking point of like, guess what?
Well, how do you accept that?
Yeah.
I don't need the asanas.
Yeah, like this actually, let's explore.
Give up all technique and come to Krishna.
So I think there was some of that going on where he had reached that limit that we've been talking about, and whether it's age and your body reaches that limit, or whether it's ambition and your ambition reaches a limit and just says, I don't give a shit anymore. Like it's the same kind of process, I think, of having to come to terms or like start to do the inner work around what it all means and what you've devoted yourself to, and what was it all for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it should be
to me, that's when the yoga really starts, is when you start asking those questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe coming into it a little older. I didn't get in young, and seeking something different than ballet. So when I was in New York, I remember the company dancers, taping up their feet and getting acupuncture so they could perform, because it's all about how it looks on stage. Nothing else matters. And I was seeking something different than that. And fortunately, the teacher I was working with was saying what matters is how it's feeling, how you feel the rest of the day, how you feel. So it's interesting that Russell always felt bad.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it felt like when I did that primary series class, that first lead class, I was like, oh, I need to be doing this. Because Vinyasa Flow, when I first went to some of those classes, like with Brian Kest and such, that I could do that pretty well. I was flexible. I could kick my leg up and stuff. But Ashtanga showed me all the places I was weak. Like I hated Chaturanga. I didn't think I'd ever be able to do Chaturanga.
Yeah.
So it was that I need 30 years of this.
My dad used to work on Brian Kest's mom's car. He was a mechanic in Detroit, and Brian's out of Detroit, and so his mom had some kind of car that my dad worked on for him. Just random connection.
Brian's another interesting one. There are so many interesting characters in yoga, in the yoga world.
Yeah.
Brian used to teach at Yoga Works way back when. Then he started his power yoga thing.
Yeah.
And occasionally at one point I was teaching on a Sunday night at Yoga Works, and I would pop into his class before that, just work time-wise because it was down the street. And like, if I would just, I don't know what it was, he didn't like me or something, but I remember we were doing Titasta Panagustasana. We had the leg here, and he
Yeah.
was walking around the room, and he hit my leg, and I wobbled and stood up again, and he hit my leg again. It was like, I don't, I didn't know what it was. He was anyway.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Quite a few characters. I mean, that's such a beautiful experience too that you had coming up in Yoga Works as it was like really coming into its own and blossoming, because so many incredible teachers came through Yoga Works, and it really was, I think, the model that most modern studios base their classes and their, with the boutique store and all of
Right.
the things, now it's all kind of based on the Yoga Works model. Before that, there wasn't really that type of yoga school.
Yeah, when I started, we had the one studio, well, 2 studios, but Montana Avenue, the one location, and then they opened Main Street. And I mean, on the schedule, I remember when Sean Korn first got hired. She was just before me. We were both teaching at Santa Monica Yoga.
Yeah.
This is so long ago. And then Sean, but we were both practicing at Yoga Works. And Shiva was there, Shiva Ray and Rod Stryker and
Rodney
Steve
Yee?
Ross.
Oh.
Steve
Who?
Ross. Yeah.
Rodney
Steve
Yee?
Ross. Rodney Yee? I don't think he
he
taught
was at Yoga Works.
Oh, okay.
He was
Never mind.
He did his own
Piedmont.
thing.
Yeah, he was Northern California.
Oh,
He
that's
did
right. In
workshops
Oakland. Yeah, that's right.
up in Oakland, yeah. Piedmont studio. Yeah, it was, there were Max Strom. I remember when Max got hired. I remember when Vinnie Marino, do you know Vinnie?
Yes.
So Vinnie at one point taught at Malibu Gym.
Yeah.
And I remember going to his class there, and there were like 3 people in class. And then he was practicing with Monte. I don't know if I should tell these stories. Oh, he doesn't, he wouldn't care. And I remember he was practicing with Monte, and he's like, "Oh, Monte's never gonna hire me." And of course, he hired him, and he became very popular.
Yeah, he's super famous. He's like one of their
Yeah.
most popular teachers ever.
Vinny?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. Wow.
He
So
has a
funny.
great wit, and he's so much fun. But yeah, I remember way back before,
Yeah,
been around a while.
Chuck always said that about Maddie, is she had a skill or like a sixth sense about her that she could really pick out talent. She could really tell, like, oh, this person's gonna be a great teacher, and she really just would handpick, her
And
from the
she did
students
all
that
of
were
that.
coming. Yeah.
She ran that whole side of the school. When
Yeah.
she was hired, when she'd hire you, then she'd take your class. And
Mhm.
at the end of class, she'd say like, "Lauren, we have to talk." And then she'd like schedule you for a week from then. And all week you're like, "Oh God," And then she's like,
Yeah.
"I don't know why you're doing Surya Namaskar C," or "You
Right.
shouldn't have beginners sustain their breath," or she'd take notes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does Surya Namaskar see?
Oh, that's like stepping back. I remember one time I must have taught that. So you inhale up, you fold forward, step 1 foot back, go to down dog. You could do knees, chest, and chin up.
Yes.
Whatever the variation.
Oh.
Yeah,
And then
like
step
that
forward,
old
it's like
style.
Shivananda
Oh,
style.
Shivananda style.
Yeah.
And that's, you're
Yeah.
calling that Surya Namaskar C. That's cool. Okay. Wow.
Tim Miller used to do a Surya Namaskara C though. And that would just be kind of like what my practice is now, like a hybrid of Ashtanga series poses mixed together, basically vinyasa flow. He would call it Surya Namaskara C. I remember
Yeah.
doing
Wow.
those workshops with him. Did you ever
Yeah.
take with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hosted him too a couple of times, and he did also like a Ashtanga inspired class, I think, which is also like just a vinyasa
Basically,
class, but
yeah, what he would call Surya Namaskara C or something. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
People make it their own.
Yeah, I think it's nice to hear that people have been making it their own for since the inception of the practice, and that allows for a little bit more like to hold it loosely in a way and to have some freedom and to have a sense of playfulness about the practice and exploration because as we've been talking, I think it really does help with coming to terms with your body as it ages or coming to terms with the health issues or having children or
Hmm.
you know reaching a point where you're like I can't do this anymore in this way. It gives
Yeah,
you
when you
some
either yeah.
it just gives you some sense that you can still be practicing Ashtanga yoga and it doesn't have to be so strict in a way.
Can I show you something? I know we're on the radio, but this is something I made up. Let me see. I've got my foot here. Okay. And so I would do, you know how you do Paschimottanasana A, B, C, and D? And
Uh-huh.
then I started teaching Paschimottanasana E. You put your fingers in between each of your toes, and then you
Uh-huh.
bend forward from there.
I think it's great. I've noticed that, a lot of old people, their toes go in this way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I've been consciously like pulling them open. I
yeah.
remember Chuck and
Oh, look at your beautiful feet.
I know,
Let me
she
see
has
that
great
again.
feet.
Oh, you go right out. Oh, that's lovely. Look at
Chuck
that.
Chuck and Richard Freeman, I would call their feet like gecko feet. Their toes were so spread that even when they were relaxed, there was space between their toes. And I think it's so important for people's feet. People don't pay, look at that.
Yeah,
People don't
yeah.
pay attention to their
Mm.
feet,
I
in
like
like
to
a
get it
gym.
widely
Yeah, it's
spread.
true.
That's what I like to do. Really
Well, I
spread
think
them
it's
out.
so good for the bones because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see a lot of older people, their toes get all kind of crunched up on,
Yeah.
and ballet dancers, I lucked out. I had
Yeah,
really,
you really did.
you know, I would get these shoes made in San Francisco, and they would make a squarer toe if you had a squarer foot,
Mhm,
and God, I can't remember what they are called, but I used to order them from San Francisco.
mhm.
And they actually would make it for the shape of your foot, whereas most toe shoes are pretty
Yeah.
standard, just a standard
Yeah.
shoe.
Cram your foot into it, shoe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I told you I was like in my late 20s when I kind of discovered yoga, and I was thinking, what can I do for the rest of my life? Because my dancer friends were all, injuring themselves. And because
Mhm.
again, it's all what it looks like. And
Mhm.
I feel very fortunate that I transitioned at that time. And
Mhm.
then interestingly, I got into doing some acting and stuff years ago, did a lot of TV commercials, and got back into the business after taking the acting business, after taking time off to raise my son. And then I booked a bunch of dance jobs.
Yeah, I know, I was gonna
Yeah,
say, well,
for
you're dancing again, Lauren, so it came full
yeah,
circle.
yeah. I booked the TV show Transparent as a dancer for the finale.
You were in that
Um,
show
I was in the finale, which they did they did
after
4 seasons
after
after everything
Tambor.
happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they came back and they did a musical, and I'm one of Judith Light's little posse. We were the Bubbies.
I didn't see it.
And
I'll go back and see that.
it's like a 90-minute
Wow.
movie, you can watch it, it's on Amazon.
Wow.
Um, and then I did a bunch of, music videos, you know?
Mhm.
That's
And
amazing.
then about it's 2 years ago, actually. 2 years ago on August 3rd, I, um I was shooting a music video and they put me in these platform tennis shoes, and I was Gam Gam, and I was just doing a big kick, and I had already done like a handstand splits and splits on the floor and all this. And I did this big kick and I fell off my tennis shoe and tore my ACL. This was
Oh.
2021, September 16th. I had made
Oh,
it most of
no.
my career not injured. And I was like, "Oh god." But finally on August 3rd, 2022, so 2021 September I injured it. I did a lot of rehab and finally decided to get a replacement. And
Mhm.
now it's 2 years. It's good. It's really good
Yeah.
now. But
Wow.
then I had to relearn, like I couldn't push up to upward bow or Vedanakrasana. I
Right.
couldn't stand up from a back
Mhm.
bend. I didn't know if I'd ever do that stuff again at 65 years old. And
Yeah.
now I'm doing all that stuff again. So it's a never ending journey, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
went in and my surgeon is like, well, we usually see this injury in like teenagers and 20-year-olds because that's soccer and football. Did you ever
Yeah.
turn ball wrestle?
I dislocated both femurs.
Oh God.
I dislocated my right femur going forward. Excuse me, someone else dislocated it. I was just there. And then the left one went the opposite way, where the femur came out of the socket the other way. And that
So
was
out of the
just
hip.
me. Huh?
It came
Out
out
of
of the
the
hip.
hip.
Yeah.
So did you
Yeah,
tear up like your hip flexors
everything.
and the psoas and everything?
The total what's that word called when you have the complete separation of the
No avulsion, I think,
avulsion. I had
of
a
the
total
hamstring.
avulsion of the hamstring. 100% of, yeah. And I told the story before, but I was in a class and Sarah down in Houston, is that her name?
No, Rachel.
Rachel down in Houston pointed it out. I said, what happened there? Because all of your muscles are bunching up. No, she told you about it later. All
She's
of
a
his muscles are bunching
physiotherapist.
up on his calf. Does he have a hamstring tear or something? Yeah. Yeah, it was bad.
American football's dangerous.
I
Yeah.
loved it. I loved
It's very
hitting people.
dangerous.
I loved it so much. It was the first time in my life, I think, that I'd experienced joy. I was like,
What
this is
position did you play?
I started out as linebacker, which I loved. I did a little defensive end because I was quick, but then everybody hit puberty except me. I'd already hit puberty. So then everybody else caught up. So then they switched me to offense, which I hated. I hated being on offense because I really, really liked was hitting people. And so then I played wide receiver.
You're not a large person. You
I
don't seem
know,
it.
no, but I'm super fast and I can jump out of the gym.
Okay.
If I could hold it in my hand, I could jam it in a basketball rim. But a basketball is a little bit too big for my hands. But like a volleyball, I can jam a volleyball. I was a jumper. So, and I was quick. So in Louisiana, I played class 5A high school football as a wide receiver. And that's when I just
Wow.
got my hip dislocated. Some
Then no more
boy,
football.
hmm?
Then no more
No more
football.
football. Some boy that was going to go to college and be like a real football player. He hit me hard.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that film Concussion?
I've
Yeah.
heard about
Is
it.
that the one with is Will Smith in
With
that
Will
one?
Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
yeah.
great. That was really, really good.
It was
Yeah,
very good.
they did all kinds of work on the study of the amygdala and how football players have such a big amygdala, and ladies like you have such a thin amygdala because you do all this work, pacifying your universe.
Our aggression.
Your aggression. It's really good for you.
Yeah, but
Ooh.
like football players and veterans,
Yeah, they end
Well,
up
Yeah.
with all
they
the
they find this brain damage.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, they changed some of the rules in the football league due to that.
It doesn't
little
do
bit.
it. Does you need to outlaw if you really want to do anything about concussions and CTE, you need to outlaw the sport. Don't fuck around.
But they won't.
You got to outlaw hockey, and no one's going to outlaw hockey. They still punch each other in the face in hockey. And so they don't allow football players to do that, which is absurd, given how hard they hit each other in the face. So you got to outlaw hockey, boxing, football. If you're really serious
Boxing,
about it,
for sure.
you have to
About
outlaw the
people's
sports.
brains.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a total hypocrisy, and just you're trying to save face for your advertisers, and that's it. And it's ridiculous. It's not safe to play those sports.
Mm-mm.
You can't make them safe.
Yoga's much safer.
Barely.
Less concussions.
Can you just before we
Less
finish up,
concussions.
can you tell us how you ended up on the Ellen DeGeneres show? How did that happen?
So I had some videos on YouTube and doing a scorpion pose. So I get a call from, actually, they had emailed me and it went into junk and
Oh.
I didn't see it. And then somehow I saw it when I was cleaning up trash, a producer from the Ellen DeGeneres show. And I wrote them back and they're like, oh, okay. And I gave them a phone number and then didn't hear anything. I'm like, oh, well, blew that. Didn't know what they wanted me to do, but they were interested in something. So then I get a phone call and they're from a producer and they're like, can you put glasses on with your feet? That's what they asked me. So I had my friend at the time. Um, I didn't know what they meant. So I picked up the glasses like this and I put them on with my feet. And I had a video and I sent it to them, and they're like, no, in a back bend, in
Yeah.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I was like, I couldn't figure out even how to pick up the glasses so they'd be in the right position. So I then I played around with a hat. And
Mm.
so I realized I could pick up a straw hat. I had this gardening hat and go into a back bend and put it on my feet, put it on my head in
Yeah.
scorpion pose. So I said, I don't know about the glasses, but I can do a hat. And so I had my friend film it and sent it to them. And then they wrote back, they said, we love it. We're going to show it to the high top producers. And then they're like, we love it. You're filming like, it was like tomorrow or something.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I go in, it was a Thursday, I remember that. And they bring you in at like 8 in the morning. They film the show at like 3 in the afternoon or
Oh
something.
my
But you do a
gosh.
rehearsal with a producer. You don't meet Ellen until you're on the show.
Yeah.
So the segment was something called like Our Talented Audience. And then they plant you in the audience.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
They
all bullshit. Yeah, okay. That's awesome.
they found us all on YouTube.
Yeah.
They had a BMX bike rider on our show and this guy who could sing in 2 different octaves. So he did a duet of A Whole New World with himself. He was great. I can't remember his name, Nick something, but and then I checked him out after he had a whole bunch of videos where he was doing that. He could
Wow.
sing all these Disney songs in 2 parts, the female and the male thing.
Amazing.
And I
That's
put her
awesome.
laughing at it.
It's when no, but wait, no, wait. So I haven't seen the video, so you can watch this video. You can Google it. So you're sitting in the audience, and then Ellen, does she call you out, and you go up to the
Yeah,
stage? And so you walk.
yeah.
That must be terrifying. That part. So you walk down to the stage, and then you're standing right next to the 2 couches, and they got the TV screen behind you. And then she says, "Do it." What does she say?
Yeah, so she says, Lauren Peterson is Lauren Peterson here, and you go down. So in the studio, if you've seen, no, I don't think she has her show anymore, right? But there's a open space
Yeah,
where they
like
would have like a band perform if they had a band on.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
couches are on the one side, so she's kind of over there. But she interviews you, asks you a couple of things, and I remember she said, "So, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to put a hat on my head." And she's like, "Okay, because you're supposed to do something weird." And then I
Yes.
say, "With my feet." And then she's like, "Okay." And then I did the trick.
And
And
Scorpion.
so you stand up from the couch, and then you just go into a handstand?
Oh, but I never sat on the couch. So we were standing up
Oh,
and they
okay.
had my hat backstage. So she has this guy bring out the hat and he runs out and they give me the hat. And
Amazing.
then she goes over to the couch. You can see her in certain angles in the background, like watching and um and I put the hat on the floor and I stand on the hat and I bend over and I put my hands down and then I squeezing the hat with my feet, I pick it up
Oh, yeah,
and then I go into a back bend and I put the hat on my head and land.
that's so
Wow.
funny.
I was really nervous because even though they film it ahead of time, it runs live. They're not cutting.
Right.
Mhm.
And I felt like I got there and I wavered and I went like this. And then I dropped it on my head. Whereas at that time, I could have put it on and tapped it with my feet. So then I made a video of me doing it like all these different ways.
That's so
And so
funny.
you're in Vrishikasana, and then the feet come back over and around, back into a forward bend, and then you stand up.
Let me see. I landed in
In the
Urdhva
back bend.
Danurasana.
Oh,
I
you
landed that
landed in
way.
Overdrive, but how did you keep the hat on your head?
Can't remember if I might have just put my hand on the head and stood
Mm,
up.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so
I would have
awesome.
been shaken. I would have been shaken so much. Oh man, I had to do.
Did they
Yeah.
ask you, like, what you did for a living, or did they
Yeah, yeah.
they
First
yeah?
she asked that. She's like, they ask you like, where do you live and what do what do you
Did you
do?
get
I
any
teach yoga.
clients from it?
Well,
No, I don't think so.
did you say that you were a yoga teacher? Is that what you
Yeah.
said? I'm a professional yoga teacher. Okay.
That's
Wow.
so
Yeah, I think
good.
I said I was a yoga teacher because yeah, I was. That's all I was doing at that point.
Wow.
It was fun.
Yeah,
I
it's
had to
super
do yoga in front of Tim once and like some kind of like at the joist yoga thing.
oh,
And
yeah.
I was shaking and sweating buckets, and there wasn't even a TV in the room. Would have
In
been
front of Miller?
in front of Tim Miller. Yeah, he was like in the audience to watch us do like
A
Andrew
demo?
Hillam and David Meliotis. We did
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jessica Walden, we did a yoga demo, and I was
Oh, wow.
shaking like a leaf. Mm.
We did Ashtanga demo at Yoga Works.
Ah,
Second series, intermediate series. And that
Hmm.
was really cool. It was like Brent Kessel. He was the other person at our studio that went through fourth with Chuck.
wow.
Oh yeah.
He's amazing. Brent, who was in that demo? Lisa Walford
Oh,
Mm.
was
yeah.
in that demo.
Nice.
Nancy Goodstein, what's her name? Not Beauregard, that's another yoga teacher. Noelle Mermount,
Mm.
um, Monte was one of them. Chuck called it out.
Oh, wow.
And that's
Mm.
one and only time my parents saw me do yoga. I was so surprised they actually showed
Oh,
up. So I think
that's nice.
it was a celebrating they were opening Main Street, their
Mm.
second yoga studio, and they had
Mhm.
like a party and they did a yoga demo.
Mhm.
There were about 6. Raphael was in there. Um, that video's floating around out there somewhere too. I think there's a video of us doing intermediate series on
Wow,
YouTube.
that's awesome.
I think
Amazing.
someone Lisa knew filmed it.
Mm.
That's incredible, all the history, all the yoga history that, yeah, that before Instagram, before all the social media, there
Yeah.
people were still doing demos and things were happening.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've seen the one with Patabi Joyce with, Chuck and Mati and,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the
um,
Yoga Works
Yeah,
videos.
that was
yeah, the
homework.
Yoga Works video.
That was self-study
Yeah.
for us. Instead of reading the sutras, we'd watch that video.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I'll tell you my first introduction to Ashtanga yoga, I don't know why I bought it. It was probably VHS tape or maybe a DVD. It was Richard Freeman doing primary series.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at that
Yep.
point, I was kind of teaching myself. I hadn't done much. I know my baby was really little. And I started doing it with him, did a few sun salutations. And then at some point, I just sat down and watched him.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
before I had gone to
Yeah.
Mati, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I ended up buying that DVD or VHS tape or whatever it was,
It was going
but it's
around.
like, are you
Yeah.
kidding? When he got to like Mariciasana D, I was like, are you kidding?
Exactly. Yeah, it was.
That was my first impression. And
Yeah.
then Raphael used to go, do you know Raphael?
I
He
don't
was a
think I know
totally
him.
local guy. You might not. He didn't teach. He never taught. He was a student, but maybe he taught. Anyway, back in the day, I was teaching at Santa Monica Yoga. This is before I taught at Yoga Works. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, this teacher's coming into town. You have to do this workshop with us. It was an Ashtanga workshop. Raphael was the one that just reminded me who was telling me I should do Ashtanga. I
Yeah.
Ah.
wasn't doing Ashtanga yet. And he brought me in. I'm trying to think. I think it was Tim Miller, and it
Mhm.
was an intermediate series workshop. I'd never done Ashtanga. Maybe I'd seen Richard Freeman's
Oh.
video,
Yeah, wow.
Sean Korn and Shiva was in that class, and all these beautiful practitioners. And I just remember like attempting to get through it. It's
Yeah, you're just
funny.
like in the back checking it out.
Well,
Mm.
it was the two rows, the traditional two rows facing each other,
Yeah.
so there was no
Oh, yeah.
hiding.
No hiding.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
wow.
the only reason I went to the intermediate series class was I was teaching because I was teaching yoga already
Right.
at like the YMCA.
Yeah.
I had no right to be teaching yoga. So that's a funny story. I was taking yoga in Malibu at Malibu Gym, and I was taking from Herb Sandoval at Malibu Fitness, the place that I still teach at.
Yeah.
And I was teaching kids dance.
Mm.
And I think Herb at one point was leaving, wasn't going to drive out to Malibu anymore to teach. And he's told her, well, you should just let Lauren teach. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was like taught from books and, tapes and stuff.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And one of my first tapes was Lilias Folan. Do you know who
Yeah,
she is?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that's Russell's first teacher too.
Lily's
Yeah.
not my first teacher, but I
On the TV.
yeah, I would watch her when I was in high school in New Orleans, down in Louisiana. I would come home after school, and Lily's Folan would be on the TV, and she'd be teaching us Baddha Konasana, and I would do it with her and try and do all the stuff. I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. You wouldn't think like a football player, meathead. I was smoking dope, whatever, but you wouldn't think that kid would go home after football practice and watch Lily's Fallen on TV. I just really liked her. I thought she was cool. I wasn't like
So
sexually excited by her or anything. I just thought she was cool. Mm.
she was cool. Well, the very first yoga for me, I was at this seminar. So my parents were into Edgar Cayce teachings back in
Mhm.
the day. And there's a group called ARE, Association for Research and Enlightenment, that they were in.
Mhm.
And they would do a lot of metaphysical type things. And we would go with them sometimes. And this woman had posted on a community board, I'm going to do yoga in yurt number 6, whatever, if you want to join me. And I was the only one who showed up. And she was just following a cassette tape. So we
Yeah.
did it together. I did it with her every morning. I was the only one that showed up. This is my
Wow.
first introduction to yoga. So
Ye
I was probably about 28, 29.
oh, no, I'm sorry, I've lost the plot a little bit. Are you with Lilius herself in a yurt
No,
by
this is
yourself?
Lily.
No.
Free
Mm.
Lily. Okay,
Okay,
this is
okay, okay, okay.
very first exposure to yoga at all. So
Okay.
at
Okay.
the end of that week, this woman who I don't know who was gave me a copy of the cassette tape. I don't know
Oh,
who it was on the cassette tape,
amazing.
but I kept doing that cassette tape. Then I got a job going to Japan. I remember this, dancing, probably that job I was mentioning before where we did the TV show.
Yeah.
And I would play that cassette tape in my room and do my yoga practice. It just felt good, you
Yeah.
know?
Nice.
It
Yeah.
it just felt good to me. Then when I got back, my mom had 2 VHS tapes of Lilias Folan, which she never used, and I borrowed them permanently
Yeah.
and started to do them.
Yeah.
And then I started to take these classes in Malibu, and that's when I started to get to teach. So because of the dance background, I kind of looked like I knew what I was doing, but I realized I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know, I don't know if you know Herb Sandoval. He's an Iyengar teacher, but he's very dedicated. And
Mm.
when I was his student, he would make me go with him to all these workshops at Yoga Works, all the Iyengar teachers.
Yeah.
I would go down. I remember I was at one point, Kofi Busia, we were in a workshop with him and we were going to do a headstand. And I started to go to the wall, take my mat to the wall. And he's like, no, you center. I'd never done a headstand in the center of the room.
Mm.
And we proceeded to hold it for like 10 minutes. And
No, yeah.
because
Iyengar
I'm like
people.
really stubborn and a Taurus,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did. I'm like, I guess I can hold a headstand. So
Yeah.
but I was also teaching at that time, and that's when I made the decision to give up teaching the dance kids and study at Yoga Works. And that's
Mhm.
when my life kind of switched to Monte. I did teacher
Yeah.
training with Monte and Lisa Walford. This was before like there were teacher trainings everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And then I started to practice Ashtanga following that. So it was a journey, but originally a lot of self-taught. I would go to the library and get books. I would do the Bikram class on my own, at home with an infant.
Yo.
Wow.
I
Wow.
was doing those 26 poses. I had Raquel Welch's VHS tape it too, which is the
Oh,
Yeah.
Bikram class.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
I remember hearing that, what's her name from Terms of Endearment? Shirley MacLaine?
Yeah.
That Shirley
Oh,
MacLaine
gosh.
had got Bikram a visa to come, from President Nixon to come and stay in her home. So he
I
lived in her
wouldn't.
home and taught Bikram out of her house, so wouldn't surprise me that Raquel Welch was into it and all of her other friends.
Well, the
Amazing.
Bikram book, in the Bikram book that I had, um, they had a lot of celebrities in there in pictures.
Mhm.
He had a lot
Mm.
of celebrities at one point. But,
Yeah, and 4
Shirley
Rolls
used to
Royces.
Shirley I've done yoga with Shirley, and she's just really cool.
You've done
And,
yoga with Shirley? Like the 2
like, she's taken with me.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's amazing.
Shirley MacLaine.
Well,
Wow,
yeah, we did
that's awesome.
I've done yoga with Cher for years, and
Mhm,
at one point a few years ago, this has gotta be, like, Cher I was getting Cher into Ashtanga. This is, like
mhm,
I'm trying to think how big my son was. I'd say he was about 10. So 20 years ago, right?
mhm,
Probably about
Yeah.
20 years ago. This was when she was not gonna tour anymore, haha,
Right.
and she had done Believe, and that's when we started to really work together, and she loved to invite a bunch of friends to do yoga with her,
Yeah.
mhm.
and Shirley came at
Nice.
some point. I mean, John McEnroe came only because his wife, Patti Smith, dragged him in once. He did not like it. His like, um, and I don't know, we just a bunch of people would join her, and then she went on tour again, and we kind of lost. And now I'm still doing it with her, but
Yeah.
it's very different. It's been
Mhm.
20 years on and off
Yeah.
that we've done stuff together, but so a
Wow.
lot of people would pass through those doors.
Yeah.
So I had another client in Malibu who this is kind of
Well,
funny.
can I stop you? You'd go to
Yeah.
their home and teach, wouldn't you? They
Yeah,
wouldn't come
yeah.
to you. You'd go to their
No,
home,
I
yeah.
was go to there, except Sting came to our class, and we've had a few people come in to drop into class,
Yeah.
Mhm,
um,
At the gym.
at the gym, yeah. It's a very we have a lot Matthew McConaughey, when he was in Malibu, was there all the time, not in
mhm,
my class, in the gym side, and
mhm.
just nicest guy, like, he
Yeah.
would come in the afternoon right after I teach, so about noon when it's really quiet and there's mostly, like, older folks, and he would
Mhm.
talk to all the old guys about football and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen Robert De Niro in there. I've seen Janet Jackson in there. It's
Wow.
funny.
Wow.
Janet Jackson was the only person I ever saw with bodyguards. Pierce
Oh, yeah.
Brosnan's there all the time. I've done yoga
Yeah.
with him.
Wow.
Wow.
It's yeah, it's Malibu.
It's
It's
Yeah.
Malibu. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
but this one
I was
time
at a
this
Oh, go ahead, I'm
yeah, go
sorry.
on.
No, I was at a party I was at a Joyce Yoga opening in, Greenwich, and Sting walked in with Trudy, and I looked over and I looked at him, and we made eye contact just as far away as you and I are, and I like, "Oh, it's Sting." He looked at me with such contempt for recognizing him, like that. It's like, it was like, "Why are you" I was I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the look on his face. Go ahead. I'm
Oh,
sorry to
goes
interrupt
right
you.
to me.
Mm.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. So they walked in, Sting and Trudy came in with this other woman who knows everybody, this Malibu socialite person, and who I did a lot of yoga with over the many years.
Yeah.
And He introduced himself. He was very nice and Trudy. And then it was a lead Ashtanga class. And I stood in front of the class and I've done the chant hundreds of times. And I suddenly got in my head that I was
Yeah.
going to sing in front of Sting.
Yeah. Yeah.
no.
Perfect pitch Sting. Yeah.
And like all this saliva formed in my throat. Like that's never happened before. And I was like, do I swallow or not? I don't know how I got through the bloody chant. That was the scariest part. Once we were doing asana, I was
It's fine.
fine. I was
Yeah,
adjusting.
yeah. Yeah,
I
but singing in front of Sting. Yeah.
And I'm not a singer.
Yeah.
You're like, oh dear, this is.
Mm.
I'm not sure how this is gonna go.
Yeah, but they were very
Oh.
nice. Then I got to worked with Trudy at their house that they had in Malibu. And then I got to go to a retreat at their house in Tuscany that Chuck and Monte ran.
How fun.
They have
Oh.
like this villa. It's not a house, it's a villa with a huge
Yeah.
organic garden. And Trudy runs these retreats. She was at that point. I think now they rent it out for events and stuff
Yeah.
when they're not there.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Incredible.
I think I interrupted you. You were going to tell us a different story about
Well, it's just another kind of Malibu thing. So this same woman that brought Sting and Trudy to class, I did a lot of privates with her over the years, and she knows everybody. And at one point I ran into her and we hadn't done them in a while. And she's like, oh, I would love to do a private with you. I'm like, okay. And we talk and we set a date. And she says, you remember the house, right? It's the last house. It's at the end of blah, blah street. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember. So I drive down that street and I go to the last house and I pull up to the gate. They're all kind of ranch style houses. And I push the button and a voice says, yes. And I say, I'm here to do yoga. Okay. They open the gate and I drive in and I park. And normally at her house, I would go right to the gym, which is down a little hill, a separate building. But this person answers the door, who was probably working for them, and said, oh, she's not here. She's picking up her son. Come in. And I'd been in this person's house, but not a lot. So I go in, I sit down and I see all these kids' toys. And I'm like, that's odd because her kids were closer to my son's age. The person I was going to had 2 boys. And I thought, oh, maybe she has nieces, nephews, And then I hear a voice that says, whose car is that? And in walks Julia Roberts, and she's carrying her son. Now, I still think I'm in the right place because it wouldn't surprise me at all for Julia Roberts to be at this person's house.
Right.
So I said, oh, hi, I'm Lauren. I'm here to do yoga. And I think she's arriving to do yoga. And she's like, who are you supposed to be seeing? And I told her the name and she says, happens all the time. Second house past the ugly brown one. I had pulled up at the wrong house.
You went into Julia Roberts' house by accident. And she just lets anybody in, evidently. Come on in.
I'm sure that she had a talk with the person who buzzed me in. And
wow. Please
So
stop
anyway.
letting Charles Manson into my house for the last
And
time.
you have to drive like a tiny electric car and say you're there to teach yoga, and you can
Yeah.
fool anybody.
You
That's
can
right. Moral of the
indeed.
story.
That's what I'm going to start doing. I'm going to drive around Calgary. I'm just let myself into any place and say I'm here for the yoga.
Perhaps
It
we're
seemed
gonna run
a believable story.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. It's been such a joy to talk with you. I feel like you've got probably 10,000 more of these stories. I would love to hear all of them. What are you doing now? Can we push anything for you? Do you even accept students? I don't even know. Maybe it's too hard to get into your class.
Oh no, well, anybody can come to my classes at Malibu Fitness. Come up to Malibu. Yeah, those are
We're all
open.
going to be there.
And evidently, anybody can just go into anyone else's home at any time. So you can find Lauren.
As long as you got the right buzzer code.
That's right. The bright story. Yeah, MalibuFitness.com is where my public classes are. And I teach there part of the week. And then private clients, I just do figure it out one-on-one. But I would love to promote an upcoming Yoga Gives Back retreat. So Harmony and
Yeah.
I went to India together, which we didn't even get into all that.
I
And
know.
for
Oh,
Yoga
right.
Gives
Yeah.
Back, we're both huge supporters of the organization that Kayoko started. And so this is her charity retreat in Nagano, which is where
In
Kayoko
Japan.
has a home.
Where they had the
It's
Olympics.
called.
Mhm.
Nagano.
Yeah, and that's going to
Mm.
be November 27th through the 29th. If any exchange rates are great now for us in Japan, for US dollars anyway. And I did it last year. It's a beautiful retreat. So that you can find probably at Yoga Gives Back. If you're on Instagram, definitely look there. And I've been posting about it on my Instagram. My Instagram is Lauren Peterson, one word, OHLAURENPETERSON. I also am going to China August. I'm going to be teaching at the Akula Yoga Festival August 16th to the 18th. And while I'm in Japan, I'm going to be teaching at Yoga Fest September 22nd. And I might be doing a class with Jeff, who was at another Yoga Gives Back event. And I believe Joss and Donna Delory are going to be at the Nagano retreat. So
Nice.
that's going to be super fun.
Beautiful.
I
You'll be in
found it.
Japan for about a month then.
I'm going to be in Japan for 3 weeks. So the first weekend
Nice.
I'll do Yoga Fest. Then I do the Nagano retreat. Then I have a workshop in Nagoya, and then I'm doing a retreat in Okinawa. So I have a big history with Japan. So
Yeah, and it's
I-
continued on from dance to yoga.
from
I
dance
found you.
to
Oh,
my
Lauren
And your
Peterson.
son, your
My
grandson.
son is living outside Tokyo, so this is really just an excuse to go see him.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Your
so
son
nice.
lives in Japan. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He lives
Oh,
outside
Lauren.
Tokyo. He was
Oh,
dual
Lauren
citizen.
Peterson. I'm now one of your followers.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
This
So
was
people
so
can find out
delightful.
all about the Yoga Gives Back retreat and all of your other workshops and retreats
Yeah, I'm on
happening in
Facebook
Asia.
too, not as active, but I do repost things like
Yeah.
from Yoga Gives Back on there when I think about it. So, and
Yeah.
that I think you can just find. I think my thing on you can find Lauren Peterson, but I think it's like Yogi Lauren, like
Yeah,
that
the handle.
Facebook.com/Yogi Lauren. I think you can find me because there's probably a lot of Lauren Petersons there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
But I'm
we'll put it in the show notes.
more active on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. And people can come take classes with you online too.
Right. Just send me a DM me on the best
Yeah.
thing to do is because I do have Zoom classes online and they're all donation based. I didn't even get into, I started a program volunteering at the Trans Lounge at the LA LGBT Center. I was teaching yoga there. And when everything shut down, we kind of moved to Zoom. And so but the classes are open to everybody. But I'm saying that because I like to offer free yoga for those who can't afford it. As we know, yoga can be expensive. The beautiful thing is that like my clients from Malibu who opt to take it at home pay me. And then
Yeah.
those who can't, they
Get the benefits.
yeah, share their beautiful spirits with us.
Yeah.
So
That's
but
lovely.
I have an email list and I will
Mhm.
send you the Zoom link. And the best thing to do is just DM me and give me your email and I'll add you to that list if you want to join on Zoom. We have
Yeah.
4 classes. We do have one led Ashtanga that Harmony's done. I have a restorative class called Friday Night Chill. Guess when it is?
Friday night.
A basic class, and then we have kind of a flow. So a little something for everybody.
I'm gonna make it to some of your other classes one of these days. It just seems like always Wednesdays and Saturdays. I'm always busy.
Yeah, I
Mondays
understand.
is like a good day for me usually.
I love it when you pop in, Harmony.
I'm gonna pop back in. I gotta get back on it. Now that I'm here again in Calgary. I was traveling,
I tell you,
and it was impossible.
when the whole lockdown happened, then I started to get like friends from back east popping into the Zoom classes. And then I have like other yoga teachers who I haven't
Yeah.
seen who I used to teach with pop in, and like Deirbla and Jeannie
Yeah.
Hellman. come
Yeah.
in. It's so nice to stay connected with people. That was
Yeah.
one silver lining about what we went
Yeah.
through, in
Totally.
2020 and
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
New
this is
new
why I've kept
connections, new communities, and rekindling of old connections. And
absolutely, and
yeah.
being able to offer to a wider, you know,
Yeah.
demographic of people. It's
Yeah.
really nice. I always wanted to be able to do that. I
Mm.
liked when Brian started the kind of donation model that,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's worked out. It's
Yeah.
nice.
Well, you are a blessing to me in my life, so thank you,
Oh, you
and
are to me
I know you'll
too.
be a blessing to all of our listeners too. It's so wonderful to connect with
Yeah,
you
well, I
and
hope
share
some of you
your
can make it
story.
to Japan. We've got a few slots left, and
Hmm.
the wonderful thing is that you're doing something great for you, and we're all there,
Yeah.
benefiting, Yoga Gives Back, which please check out Yoga Gives Back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Thank
an
you.
Find out more
incredible
about that
charity
organization.
organization for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll put links to Yoga Gives Back in the show notes too, so people can
That would be fantastic.
donate as well and also look up the retreat. So all
Yes.
the info will be there.
Yeah. And wherever you are, they have, like, events happening all over the world,
Yeah, and it
ambassador
also
meet.
yeah, openings for ambassadors too. So if you're a yoga
Mhm.
teacher listening and you wanna support Yoga Gives Back and offer donation classes, you can apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a very special trip
Yeah.
earlier this year, Harmony and I and
Yeah.
others,
It was so
visiting
nice.
recipients of it, and it's such a worthwhile cause.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. So thank you so much, Lauren. I look forward to
Thank
connecting
you.
with you soon.
Yes, you too. And Russell, so lovely to meet you. It was
Nice
fun.
to meet you, Lauren. Mm.
That was just so amazing. What a fun conversation. I learned so much, and I hope you did too. If you would love to go deeper and take your practice off your yoga mat and into your life, into the world, starting to learn more about pranayama, developing a regular practice, chanting, tuning into the vibrations and the Sanskrit mantras, as well as looking at some of the more esoteric philosophical concepts, come on in to my Inner Circle mentorship. This is a private community that's online. I offer weekly Mysore classes in addition to these monthly workshops and special programs. And you can find out all the information when you join the Finding Harmony community. Head on over to community-harmonyslater.com. Join the community and come on into my Inner Circle mentorship. I would love for you to be a part of this beautiful space and start growing into the full richness of this yoga practice together with me. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.